Welcome to StockTalk Special Edition for January 13th, 2016. My name is Raymond Bittner, Livestock Specialist with Manitoba Agriculture, Food and Rural Development. Today we are pleased to provide you with a broadcast of Ask the Vet with Dr. Wayne Tomlinson. Ask the Vet was made at Vita Beef and Forage Days in Vita, Manitoba on January 11th, 2016. The recording was made in front of a live audience, and we recorded it to be able to pass along the presentation to Manitoba producers. Dr. Tomlinson's biography would include a degree in agriculture with a major in animal science from the University of Manitoba in 1981. He later graduated with a degree in veterinary medicine in 1985 from the Western College of Veterinary Medicine. Prior to joining Manitoba Agriculture, Food and Rural Development, he spent 22 years in a mixed animal practice in southwestern Manitoba. Wayne has been employed as an extension veterinarian with Mafford ever since 2007. We will begin the presentation starting now.
Can you hear me in the back? Thank you. I'll try to speak loud. There was a question at the end of last session, and one of the producers came up to me in the coffee and was asking me about the local anesthetic. Will it be available to producers? Lidocaine is typically the product that we use for local anesthetic for freezing, for minor surgeries, things like dehorning, castrating. Lidocaine is a non-prescription drug, so it is more readily available than prescription drugs. You may have different availability at different vet clinics. I personally would not sell lidocaine to producers in my practice when I was practicing in private practice, simply because unless I had been to their farm and showed them how to use it. So that was my requirement as a veterinarian. I didn't feel comfortable just giving a fella a bottle of lidocaine and saying, here, go and use it. I had no problem with producers using it for dehorning and castrating, but I wanted to show them how to use it correctly first. My rule, not anybody else's. The lidocaine takes away the pain, the acute pain. So from the surgery, the castrating, the dehorning, it takes away that sharp initial pain. It doesn't do much for chronic pain, so long-term pain. If we're talking about using a product for the long-term pain, then we need to get into some of the other painkillers. The most common one right now that we're using in the industry is a product called meloxicam. It comes in a pill. It also comes in injectable, but the pill is most common. It comes in about a 15 milligram pill. You use 3 of these pills per 100 pounds. And you pop them in the mouth, and it'll give pain relief to that calf for about a day and a half or so. So it'll give a little bit longer pain relief. It doesn't do much for the acute pain because it's going to take a little while to work. So it's not something you can use, pop those 3 pills in and dehorn it and expect the calf not to feel the pain. They will still feel the pain, but it will give them some pain relief over the next day and a half. Yes? The question was, what would those 3 pills cost per animal? Use 45 milligrams per 100 pounds, about $1 or $1.50 per animal, per 100 pounds. So depending on the size of the animal, on how much that's going to cost you. Any other questions on that pain relief? Because it is something really, really important. There's an online newsletter that I read. It's called Bovine Veterinarian, and the number one issue in 2015, according to Bovine Veterinarian, was Carrie Underwood. I don't know if you're familiar with Carrie Underwood, but she's a country and western singer. Got lots of songs. We could probably Ray here could probably pull it up on his YouTube, and we could play a Carrie Underwood song here. Carrie Underwood is from a farm in Oklahoma, I believe. Her husband, I think, is Jeff Fisher, a hockey player. So I mean, we would think she would be very agriculture friendly. She doesn't eat meat because she hears her calves cry. She remembers that as a kid growing up, it was one of the saddest times, was at weaning time, because all those baby calves were crying for their mums. So she's no longer eating meat. She's advertising, she's talking about this. Those calves aren't crying, they're bawling for their mom. They're saying, hey, I'm over here, I'm hungry. But that's not the way she interpreted that. We're going to have a lot more of that sentiment as we go forward over the next 5-10 years, where we're going to be fighting all kinds of issues like this, where people are concerned with how we are raising our beef. So pain relief is going to become extremely important going forward, so that we can prove to the consumer, to McDonald's, to the soccer mom in Toronto or Vancouver, that our meat, the beef that we have in those supermarkets, is humanely raised. It's going to be a very, very important factor going forward. Any other questions on this or anything else? My talks are fairly informal. I really don't care if we get through all the slides today. I really want to get you guys some information that you find useful. I'll probably have to aim this at that. Oh, okay. Anybody familiar with what a Luddite is? A Luddite is a person who cannot handle technology. I am a Luddite.
You have to just hit the space bar.
I can hit the space bar. Apparently that doesn't work. Okay, I can handle this. Reproduction. I thought we would talk a little bit about reproduction this morning, seeing as that reproduction is extremely important for beef production, beef profitability. I think it's the most important factor. And there's no fancy pictures on the presentation today because, as I said earlier, I am a Luddite. As I was working on my presentation last night, watching the football game, kind of watching the hockey game, bouncing back and forth between the two, trying to do my presentation, a message popped up on my computer and it said, do you want to save this? And I pushed no instead of yes. And so I had to redo the presentation last night. Anyway, so what are the variables for our production, and successful reproduction? We're looking at the number of cows bred, the number of calves that we lose, whether it's from early embryonic death. Those are typically the ones that happen in the first 40, 45 days of pregnancy, or our abortions that occur later on, and then our death loss. The most common time for death loss in a beef herd is right around calving, right around that parturition time. The next most common is probably the first week or 10 days of life. Then the other death losses occur a little bit later on. They're not as severe, we hope. So, profitability for a cow-calf herd. We need to know how many pounds of calf we're going to wean for each cow that's exposed. I'm going to target 500 pounds because it's a number, it's round. I like round numbers. So that's how big I want. I want to average for every cow that I turn out with a bull this spring, the following fall, I want to wean 500 pounds of calf. Okay, so I got 75 cows. I'm going to go for 93% conception rate. I think that's achievable. I think we can do better than that, but I think that's a good number that most people can achieve. So if I turn out 75 cows, I'm going to get 70 bred cows. I'm going to have 1.5% abortions. Maybe I feed some moldy feed. Maybe I have a bit of disease. Congenital abortions just happen. I mean, those are the things, the calves with bad hearts, bad brains, those sorts of things. So I'm going to lose a calf from abortions. So those 69 calves that are born alive, I'm going to run 3% death loss between my scours and my navel infection. Maybe I lose one at calving, those sorts of things. So I'm going to wind up with 67 calves in the end. So my goal was 500 pounds of calf for each one of those 65 or 75 cows that were bred. I only have 67 live calves, so I need 560 pounds of calf average if I'm going to hit my target goal of 500 pounds that I set for myself in June of 2016. I got to wean an average weaning weight of 560 pounds come November of 2017. in order to have 560 pounds, that doesn't seem like a very high target weight, but if I've got a lot of late calves, I'm going to have some 300-pound calves. It's going to take a lot of 700-pound calves to bring those ones up to the average. So you're going to see as we go through this that getting as many cows bred and keeping as many bred and having live calves is extremely important for the profitability of the beef herd. So body condition score is extremely important. We know, and we'll go through a little bit more, that fat on a cow's back is extremely important for her to recycle. Okay? Age is extremely important. Heifers that are born early, heifers that calve early, tend to keep calving early. Postpartum interval, that's the time between she calves and when the bulls go out. Again, that's our postpartum interval. The percent cycling in the herd is extremely important. Nutrition, more important than anything else, and that goes back to the body condition score. That goes back to the percent cycling. Weather, it can be a factor, but typically it's not as big a factor as the other thing. And the bottom bullet I have on here is correct application of protocols. That's for stuff like AI, how we're handling the herd, those sorts of things. So, NAMS is it's an American survey. It's out of APHIS, the USDA. So, half the operations have no defined breeding season. 60% have a 105-day or less breeding season. Actually, that should probably say calving season. 26% of operations and 23% of the cows have a 64-day breeding season or not. This, I think, is really achievable. Maybe you want to go 75 days, maybe you want to go to 84, but I don't think we need to get up here, and I don't think we need to be here with no breeding season at all. So why do we want to have a limited breeding season? We can batch our animals a little bit better. We can feed everybody our poor quality feed all at the same time. We won't have anybody. We can get rid of those feedstuffs. Observation of calving. I had a producer that he calved in February, March, then he was calving in April. While there he was seeding in May. He still had a heifer left to calve. He was driving around sowing this field, and he went by, and there was this cow, and she was laying beside the dugout. So I thought, well, when I get around the next time, I'll check on her. So he drove around one more time. Yep, she was still there laying there. Well, I better get to her the next time I come around. So he made one more pass around the field. He got halfway around the field, and he took the water pump out of his tractor. He then did what anybody would do, is he ran into Brandon. It's still on, yep. He ran into Brandon to get a used water pump. He came back, put the water pump in his tractor. It was dark, so he figured he'd start sowing the next day. He came back around the next day and he saw that cow laying there, and he went, oh my goodness. And he went running over there, and the calf was half out, stuck. Calf was chewed up by coyotes. They'd already chewed at the back end of the cow as well. He lost the cow and the calf, and simply because he wasn't watching her calf. So having them bunched closer together, we tend to watch them better. Uniformity of the calf crop. When we go to sell them, it's kind of nice if they're all the same size. They can go on a trailer together, get a buyer in, where they go to the auction mart, or get a buyer into your herd. Management works better if we've got the nice tight breeding season, and we also know when we've got reproductive problems. If you're calving all year long, you're not going to really know if your bull's only getting 80% of the cows bred, because you just go out there and check the cows, pulls few. So, why pull the bulls? We know that as you lengthen the breeding season each day longer, 4.5 cents extra cost of producing calves, and the weaning weight decreases by 0.1 pound. Producer leaves the bull out year round would sell 45 pounds fewer calf every year than a producer that calves on a 75-day breeding season. That same producer would have a $13 extra greater cost over that 75-day breeding season producer. So with the prices starting to dip a little bit here, we're always worried about our input costs. This is one of the places I think we can make a big difference in our profitability of our herd, is to have a short breeding season. This bar graph here shows weaning weight and when they calve. Now this came out of Nebraska, this particular study. These are smaller cows than what we typically have up here. These are 1,100 pound cows. So the weaning weights are maybe a little bit lower than what we would expect up here, but the trend is the same, okay? The ones that calve in the first cycle, they were 445 pound average. The ones that were out here at 61 to 80 days, they averaged 410, and these ones over 100 days were at 377. Now that's a lifetime average of those cows. So for the lifetime average, the one who calves in the first 3 weeks is 70 pounds higher. Okay? Cows failing to calve the next year. First cycle, 7%. 60 to 80 days, 18%. Those ones that calved 120 to 140 days after the start of the season, 36, a third of them will leave the herd. Okay, time of calving affects the heifers. Okay, the ones that are born in the first cycle, no, this is when they're born, not when they calve, 70% are cycling when the bulls are turned in. If they're born in the third cycle, only 40% are cycling. It's a huge difference. Pregnancy rate, the ones that were born in the first cycle, 90% pregnant. The ones that are born in the third cycle, 80%. You know, so these numbers show that it's important to pick those heifers that are born early. They tend to calve early. They tend to raise bigger calves over the time. You probably can't read that back here, but that's 50, that's 100. So the ones that calve early, they make a $50 to $100 profit. This is over 20 years, I think this was. This is the second cycle here. They're making a small profit. This is a third, fourth cycle, fifth cycle. Cows that calve in the first 21 days in over her lifetime, so 8 or 9 calves, will produce additional 1 to 2 calves over her lifetime. So that extra weight, that 70 pounds over 8 years, is 560 pounds. She raises an extra 1 or 2 calves if she calves early rather than calving late. So, in a high production herd, 61% of the calves should be born in the first 3 weeks, 85% by the end of the second cycle, and 94% by day 63. I think these are really achievable numbers, but we've got to do some work to get there. We've got to look at the reproductive traits. Okay, we've got to select animals that cycle early, that reach puberty early. Conception, we've got to worry about cows and bulls. We've got to maintain that pregnancy, and that's going to be how to prevent abortions, and that's going to be nutrition, that's going to be vaccination. Okay, these are all the traits. Okay, all these things have to happen, and we measure that once a year whether we get a live calf or not, weaned calf or not. Calving ease, 16% advantage. Okay, so cows that have an easy time calving have a 16% advantage in getting caught. Short duration of labor, more of them are in heat, more of them are pregnant. Okay, stage 2 labor, so that's when she's laying down pushing, having the calf. Okay, calf bigger, if they're born early in stage 2 or they're born late, calf doesn't seem to change a whole heck of a lot. PPI, postpartum interval, so that's that time between when she calved and when the bulls went out, so it was the same. Percent in heat. The little asterisk means that that's statistically significant. So we had more in heat if that calf is born early once they start labor rather than late. Pregnancy, again, average daily gain, the calf gains a little bit more if it's born, if it has less stress on it, and the weaning weight goes up as well. Heifers, it's important that we get our heifers to grow as quickly as possible. We want them at 60% of the mature weight at breeding time and 85% of the mature weight at calving time. So we need to keep these, we need to be careful in what we're selecting, how we're feeding them, so that we can get to these targets, so that we can have these heifers calving early and keep calving early for their entire lifetime. Bulls. Okay, we all know that they make up 50% of the calf. I think they make up a lot more than that. I think they make up like 85% of the herd. We know that as we select for larger testicles, that there's a 21-day reduced age when they come into heat. Okay, so when they reach puberty. Daughters off bulls with larger testicles come into heat earlier. Big testicles, big ovaries. Okay, it's just the way it works. So here, whether you're using EPDs of scrotal circumference or whether you're just measuring them, we know that these animals come in heat earlier. Age of puberty, here's where we were. This was the scrotal circumference EPDs back in 1970. We ran along here for quite a while. Then we started selecting for it. 1985, that's when I started in private practice, and things were pretty good. But as we started going up this slope, I started doing cesareans on younger and younger and younger animals. The youngest one I ever did a cesarean on, she was 13 months of age. She was bred by her dad. Her dad was about a 2,500 pound bull. She was 4 months of age. How he bred her, I have no idea, but he did. She was calving, a nice full-term calf at 13 months of age. And that's just a factor, I mean, of this. It's another reason for having a short breeding season. If we have a short breeding season and pull the bulls, we can stay away from some of these pregnancies, these teenage pregnancies that we typically do cesareans on. Body condition score. I prefer body condition score rather than weight. And the reason why I like BCS, body condition score, is that 1,400 pounds doesn't mean anything. 1,400 pounds on a big Charolais cow, she could be 400 pounds underweight. On a short, little British breed, 1,400 pounds, she could be way overweight. So I prefer to talk about body condition score rather than weight. We know that fat levels are really, really important in bovine. That if there's not enough fat, we wind up with older age at puberty, lower conception rate, and lower calving rate. So that's related to the amount of fat, not how big they are. When are we supposed to be done? At 11? Okay. We're not going to get through all this today. So I'm going to do a few more slides and then we'll open it up to questions on anything at all. We're supposed to be done at 11, so I'm happy with 11:15. Janelle will yell at me, but I'm okay with that. Body condition scoring. We know that inadequate feed during late pregnancy is extremely important. It takes, while cows cycle every 21 days, the eggs are not, it doesn't take 21 days to produce an egg. The egg starts being made a long time before that. It takes a few months to make an egg. So that if you starve the cow before calving, and then you start feeding her after she calves, you start giving her the good feed, you're going to have, it's going to take a little while for those eggs to start develop inside those cows, and you're going to extend that length of time between her when she calved and when she starts cycling again. So we need to feed them before calving. They need to have that fat on their back. They should already be in good body condition score, whether you go for the Canadian system at 3 or the American system. They need to be in good body condition when they calve. Okay? So here we are. You can see by this girl, this is not a fat cow. If they have a body condition score on the US system, which is 1 or 1.5 on ours, the postpartum interval is 88. They aren't even cycling on a 90-day breeding season, okay? None of them are even cycling. 2% are, a few percent are cycling, so we're not going to get any of these things bred. If we get up here in the 5 and 6, we've got a lot more getting pregnant at the end of the day. So, thin cows, they don't cycle, they don't conceive. We get an increased calving interval, increased days to coming into heat, and decreased vigor. I'm not going to go through any of the abortion stuff, but I am going to mention BVD virus, IBR virus. These are typically our most common causes of viral abortion. That's the stuff we vaccinate for. BVD is extremely important to our industry. It's a big feedlot disease. It's causing all kinds of havoc in the feedlot. We know that about 0.5% of calves are PI calves, persistently infected. The only way a calf can be persistently infected is if its mother is exposed to BVD virus before day 125. That calf inside will be infected with that virus. It will not recognize that virus as being a virus. It'll recognize that virus as being part of itself, and it will have that BVD virus everywhere, in its skin, in its eyes, in its testicles, everywhere. So every time this animal coughs, urinates, defecates, hundreds of thousands and millions of viral particles are released into the feedlot. These animals are a constant source of BVD virus. BVD virus then is an immunosuppressive virus, so these calves in the feedlot constantly exposed to this virus, constantly getting sick. Cow-calf producers are the only people that can stop this, and we need to get BVD vaccine into the cow before she's bred to protect her. So the right time of year is pre-breeding is to get that vaccine into them. I'm going to stop there and take some questions.
Was that before 120 days?
Virus? Yeah, the virus will only produce a persistently infected calf before 120, 125 days of pregnancy. Is the only time it will produce one of those persistently infected calves. After day 125, that unborn calf's immune system won't take that virus in and they will not become one of those persistently infected calves. It might still abort, it might have other troubles, but it won't be a PI calf, which will go on and cause grief in your herd for the rest of its time that's in there. Questions on anything at all? Yes?
On the cows there, how many calves would you advise a cow to have for heifer on keeper? How many calves?
How many calves would you advise a cow to have over her lifetime? That's going to depend on her production. We know that her peak production years are her 4th to 6th lactation. So hopefully then she'll start dropping off. Hopefully by then you've got some heifers coming up who are better than their mom. So usually, probably on average, 8 or 9 after that, then the heifer should be better than their mother. There's certainly some cows out there that will be fantastic producers up until the age of 12, 14, 16 years of age. Those are probably not most common. Yes? You had your hand up? Somebody back there?
Yeah, no, they answered it.
Oh, that's no fun. Yes?
So I'm trying to expand my herd, and I like somebody's cow herd who happens to breed or a calf late, so late spring, early summer. And so to take replacement heifers out of their herd, I think to push them hard enough to get them to a size to breed them in time to breed them as yearlings, I think that might not be so good for them. So what are your thoughts on breeding 2-year-olds instead?
The question is, if I'm buying replacement heifers from a herd that calves a lot later than me, is it going to be possible to get those animals to breeding age, or should I hold them back as, and then breed them as 2-year-olds and have them have their first calf as 3? And what's my opinion on that? Well, if I'm buying those animals and I'm going to hold them over for that entire year, that's going to cost me a lot of money. So it's strictly, there's nothing, those cows will, those heifers, they will wind up being bigger. It's going to cost me more to feed them their whole life. I'm going to have held them over for an entire year before they calve. That's going to cost me money. I think I am better off looking for animals that I can bring straight into my herd and breed them as 2-year-olds. It's not going to affect their long-term productivity by calving them late, but it's certainly going to affect me economically. And I'm in this for the money, not in this for anything else. Yes?
That concludes Dr. Wayne Tomlinson's Ask the Vet session from VITA 2016 Beef Week. Thank you, and if you have any further questions, you can contact Wayne at the following email on the slide. Goodbye.